Seeing none, are there bipartisan amendments? Seeing none, are there any amendments? For what purposes, gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk labeled SC01.
The clerk will report.
Amendment to H.R. 1435, offered by Mr. Ruiz. Beginning on page 2, strike line 24 and all that follows through page 3, line 6.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with, and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes in support of his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H.R. 1435, the Preserving Choice in Vehicles Purchases Act, would prevent the EPA administrator from granting a waiver of federal preemption under the Clean Air Act. As we've heard, this bill would put harmful limitations on EPA's authority to grant waivers of federal preemption under the Clean Air Act for states like California, whose vehicle emission standards are more protective than those at the federal level. I'm strongly opposed to this bill in its entirety. It is a direct attack on California and our nation's bedrock environmental laws by undermining efforts to decarbonize our transportation sector and promote technological innovation. This bill overlooks over 50 years of Congress and the EPA recognizing the unique air quality challenges faced by communities like those in my state and disregards the clean transportation leadership California has shown in response. To make matters worse, this short-sighted bill also goes after waivers previously granted by EPA. This bill requires the EPA administrator to revoke existing waivers if they do not comply with the bill's vague requirement that California standards must not, quote, directly or indirectly limit the sale or use of new motor vehicles with internal combustion engines. Industries come to Congress asking for predictability, regulatory certainty, and long-term stability. In fact, the only witness representing the vehicle manufacturing industry testified at the subcommittee legislative hearing that this bill would create confusion and uncertainty because of its language about revoking existing waivers. Furthermore, forcing the EPA's administrator to revoke existing California waivers is irresponsible and would endanger years of incredible progress in decarbonizing our transportation sector. The implementation of this language would be chaos. My amendment would bring stability by striking the section of the bill that would require the EPA administrator to revoke existing California waivers. California has significant air pollution challenges. As a physician, I have seen the public health impacts of air pollution firsthand. These consequences are serious and have very real effects on the lives of my constituents. From having to skip work to deal with air pollution-associated health challenges to spending money on unexpected healthcare costs, my constituents are experiencing the negative impacts of air pollution every day. California is making an effort to address these issues head-on and in the process has been a leader in reducing dangerous air pollution from its transportation section. This has been critical to the health of my constituents and for communities across the country. Revoking already granted California waivers is a nonsensical, destabilizing step backwards in dealing with climate pollution, supporting fossil fuels interests at the expense of innovation and public health. I strongly support EPA's statutory authority to grant California waivers for more protective vehicle emission standards, and I support a stable regulatory regime that empowers manufacturers to make decisions based on these standards, and I vote for my a vote for my amendment is a vote for regulatory certainty and stability. I also associate my comments with Ms. Castor's comments and Mrs. Dingell's comments. You see, there is a free market at play here. The free market is that the United States want to be global competitors with China in the global market, and we want to make sure that they want to make sure that there is consumer demand, as well as regulatory certainty, policy certainty in the industry. The industry that is most afraid of this market, especially the U.S. aggressively competing with China, is the fossil fuel, big oil, big gas. You see, what we're doing is we're helping to foster that market to meet consumer demand by helping to increase supply, because increasing supply will eventually reduce costs. By reducing costs, we will take into consideration the real concerns about the affordability of electrical vehicles, and we will get to that market where costs will come down. The other thing we need is consumer demand. Consumer would want to do this. But all we've seen from the Republicans have been efforts to reduce supply of electrical vehicles and the messaging, no matter how they message it, to reduce demand. And so this is about what we're seeing is the saying we want free market, but at the same time, there's market manipulation by manipulating the policies and the incentives to increase demand to reduce costs, and then also to message that the American people don't want these electrical vehicles, which in fact, there is a high demand and growing demand for electric vehicles. So the protective effort that the Republicans are doing is to foster the fossil fuel market and gas and their needs. And so this is very serious for our free market efforts and our ability to produce electric vehicles, to reduce costs and clean our air and have the can-do American spirit of leading this effort. So I urge my colleagues to support my amendment and oppose the underlying bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there discussion on the amendment? The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Dr. Joyce, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to strike the last word and speak in opposition of this amendment.
Gentleman's